I'm focused on his spirit cause it keeps me from his fire. The Holy Ghost is with me, so my fear I leave behind. My sins were all diminished when he took that breath and died. And if you think I'ma give up on my God, the devil is a lie. The devil is a lie. The devil is a lie.
Hello. Welcome to Black Tea News. I'm your host, Christina Barring. Today, we're going to be talking about Tucker Carlson's interview with George Stephanopoulos' sister, who's the Russian Orthodox nun, but she has a lot of propaganda type of stuff that they talked about. But the crazy thing that folks are really talking about is he posed the question, like, are Christians treated better in Muslim nations than they are in Israel? And it's just really wild to me. And in the interview, people have talked about how he didn't really have any like journalistic curiosity, pushing back on stuff, even things that just like aren't true, and even feeding her questions or comments, and pushing his opinions. And it was just really bizarre. But also the Democrats freaking out about Trump and DC, and Trump's like, hey, this place isn't safe and we want it to be safe. This is America's, the nation's capital. Why should you be able to get mugged and robbed and, and carjacked and shot in DC like, it is right now? And there's journalists like, what are you talking about? I live in Arlington and can come to DC to work sometimes, and and everything's hunky dory. And other people are like, what are you talking about? I can list like 5 people I know right now who's been carjacked and stabbed and all the stuff. And I've never lived in DC. I've been there quite a few times. It's not a place I feel like super safe. I don't besides like protest type of things, I don't think I've witnessed a crime in the times that I've visited. But man, that Navy Yard carjacking of an Uber driver that happened a few years ago, that was like in an area that really shouldn't be bad, not too far from where my sister used to stay. So that's just like prominent in my mind, that particular carjacking, if you have not seen it. But why are people pretending like people don't know that DC is not exactly a safe place? It's bizarre. It's really bizarre. And there's other things too, like the redistricting stuff. Democrats are still like losing their mind. I'm gonna at least show you guys this clip from Jake Tapper trying to get the best of Governor Greg Abbott, and he just looks so stupid. He just looks so stupid. But anyway, before you jump into everything, I didn't have a show yesterday, so I had a pretty bad sinus headache, so please forgive me. I don't know, it was just like the weather or whatever, but yeah. I know that there's been issues like from Canada because they had some fires and stuff, but I don't think there was like any kind of weather warning or climate warning or whatever yesterday. So I don't know. Maybe it was just like just normal sinus and not Canada sinus, but but it could feel like in here and in my like nasal cavity and stuff. So it's like, let me just take a step back and nurse my head. So I didn't get to say how was your weekend. So I hope you guys had a good weekend. I did have a good weekend myself. You guys know I always go to church, but on Saturday I took my nieces and nephews to the beach, and it is kind of a hassle to take 5 kids to the beach. Their mom was also there. The oldest is 10. The youngest is 1. She'll be 2 in later this year. I think it's I can't remember exactly when her birthday is. Maybe it's August. What is August? Is it sometime this month? Maybe it's September. I don't know. But she'll be 2. And But yeah, they were like kind of fighting in the car sometimes about one of them was making too much noise and they didn't like it. So there's a little back and forth. One, we were driving to the beach, and then um the girls kept two of the girls just kept jumping off of me, like using me as a launch pad, and they're like, "I'm gonna do the doggy dance," and then they jump off of me, and then they like doggy paddle a little bit. I'm like, why are you doing that? And then the younger boy, Noah, he wouldn't really come in the water too much. He would just kind of go like walk knee length or whatever, but he just mostly want to play in the sand. I'm like, come on, Noah. And he's like, nope, I'm good. I'm good. Nope, I'm not coming. I'm like, okay. But the baby girl, she would walk a bit to, pretty far from how far she could stand, and then she'd want to cling on to me, and she would not let me lay her on her back to like float. She would not do that. And but she liked me like lifting her up, and she would tell me to do it again, but she didn't say do it again. She would say my turn, my turn. That's how she wanted me to repeat it. So she had me doing that again and again. And then while I'm like playing with her and holding her, that's also when the girls would come and try to jump on me. And I'm like, why are you doing this? I have a baby on me. Um, but she was so cute with the sun, light behind her, like, because this was we didn't get there till like after 6. So, the sun's kind of starting to set a bit, and right behind her, and she's so cute, and the sun's just kind of like beaming in through her little hairs. So she was cute, and but we had a lot of fun. My nephew Daniel, got to go out like pretty far to swim, and we like the beach, and so he said he had a really good day. They also got to go to the movies earlier, and then they had like a slumber party at one of their aunt's house. So they had a great day, and I was glad to sow some time into their lives and be a contributor of that. And I just encourage you guys to take the time to invest love into somebody's life, to I a good afternoon for me is being at home working on my computer, writing out a book. That's a great Saturday for me. But sometimes you got to go the extra mile and do for others. And before we left, Daniel was like, "Oh, why are you taking us to the beach?" I'm like, "Don't you think that aunts should do things? Spend time with their nieces and nephews?" And he's like, "Yeah." So I'm like, "Okay, so we're going to the beach." And so we had a good time. And and on Sunday, I went after church. I went to go see a junior production of Frozen, and the lead was a young woman whose mother, well, their uncle still comes to our church, but um, their mom passed away. I've talked about her sometimes during the pandemic to cancer, and so I've kept in contact with the girls. That we call each other and talk, every so often. And so I went last year to their production of Aladdin, which she played Jasmine. And there's two sisters, but one is usually the lead. And um, so I went out to go see them, and they did such a good job. Like all the kids did such a good job. I think I might just like go watch like good children productions, not just like a normal like middle school or elementary thing, though that could be amusing, but like a really well done like production where people are really auditioning for it and stuff. And because it's amusing watching other really talented kids go and do their thing too, and what they can accomplish with different sets, and they put everything together in like 3 weeks. And I was like, she gonna be able to sing this song? Because Let It Go is not easy. And she did it. She did it. And the Anna was really, really good too. So, they did a great job. And I did get a little emotional because I was thinking about, I was like proud of the girls, and their mom's not there. And then maybe start making about my mom. And so I'm just like in the back of the theater. Their dad is just like, "It's okay. Let it all out. I understand, let it all out, It's all love, it's all love." It was, you know, but yeah, I was glad to be there for them, and they were glad that I was there. So again, take the time to sow some love into people's lives when you can. like small gestures like that, people remember. I like my nieces and my nephews. I think particularly my nephew might remember that day for a long while. They'll remember who came to see them at their plays. Those girls. So just do the thing. Sometimes, especially if you're introvert, you want to just stay in your lane. But sometimes it is important to go that extra mile for people. So that's my little advice for the day, guys. Now let's get on to some news, some really wild news. Let me start with this Jake Tapper thing. So, the Democrats are really bizarre with this redistricting thing because they know that they are perpetrators. So they're angry because, Texas is doing redistricting, and so some of their people have fled, but they fled to places like Illinois, and Illinois is pretty bad. And so the governor was on of Illinois was on CNN, and no, maybe it was ABC, and they called him out about it. And so they tried to kind of dodge, bob and weave. And then Kathy Hochul, who's the governor of New York, she got called out about some shady stuff that they did in New York a few years ago too. So their attitude is like, well, we have to do it to save democracy because these Republicans are doing it. It's like everybody's doing it. What are you talking about? Like, this is the way the things are. But you guys are like very egregious with it normally, and now you're mad about Texas when you guys have already done it. Like Gavin Newsom's like, well, we'll just go ahead and do it in our state. You're going to do it more than what you've already done. You're going to just cut out more Republican districts somehow to game the system. So anyway, there's going to be consequences for these Democrats who are just running from their duties, not doing their duties in Texas. So Jake Tapper decided to call out Governor Abbott for trying to use his authority against the members of the Texas state reps and stuff who have fled the state. And he brings up a congresswoman, like, well, why didn't you do anything then? And it's just a great moment. And I'm going to minimize myself so you guys can see Tapper's expression. It's going to be subtle, but what he does is really dirty, I think.
Your state had a congresswoman, Kay Granger, who tragically developed dementia, and then in the middle of her, I guess, second year in office, in her final term, she and her family just checked her into a dementia center in Texas, and nobody represented that congressional district for like 6 to 8 months or something. And I don't recall you saying anything then.
Well, I have the authority to apply the Texas Constitution to these members of the Texas House of Representatives. With regard to members of Congress, that's going to be up to the congressional delegation and to the federal laws of which the state would have no control over. What I do have control over, Jake, is what we're dealing with right now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay, Jake. Like, you got a point. You tried to pull one over on Mr. Abbott there, and you screwed up, Jake. Journalists, they'd be like, well, we don't pick sides. We don't pick sides. Clearly trying to trap him in some kind of gotcha, trying to paint him as some kind of hypocrite. With the situation that they described, it was a secret that this woman was going through dementia and her family put her in the center. Like, it was a secret from like everybody. It wasn't like a big Republican conspiracy or whatever. So that like Abbott or somebody was like a part of. It was a secret. And again, he didn't have the power to do anything in that situation. But Jake clearly tried to paint him as a hypocrite there. I'm so glad that Abbott was just like, bro, I didn't have the power there. I got a comment here. Tapper is a bit of a joke. He is very much a joke. But, sometimes, I feel like Tapper and some others try to really paint themselves as if they are not a joke. And there are moments when he can maybe not be, but I don't know, the Biden health stuff, for example, was really a mask off moment for Jake Tapper. And then like, oh my gosh, I have all these revelations, which the book wasn't, from my understanding, even that juicy. Not much more stuff in there than what the public kind of pretty much already know or assume anyway. And but during that time, they were pretending like Biden was fine. And then when it was convenient to like have a cash grab or something, excuse me, then he decided to be a journalist, right? And to go follow the facts that we all knew. And then he's like, oh, let me apologize to Laura Trump, even though he tried to set her up and, well, did he try to set her up? He really went after her and called her out. Well, I guess he did set her up because they played the clip. And then I mean, I guess they do it all the time. Like, here's a clip. I want you to respond to it. By the way, I'm setting you up as the bad guy. And she was right and he was wrong. And he really didn't, in my opinion, give an apology that was worth anything. But yeah, they're still going on about that. They're still going on about it. Here's some I thought some media headlines from Politico. When D's do it versus when R's do it. So this is when D's do it. Democrats try to separate their tactical use of redistricting from that of Republicans. So it's tactical, using it this is the law. This is what they can do. You're strategizing to win. Okay. And this is when Republicans do it. Republicans are ready to plow ahead with ambitious gerrymandering despite previous reprimands from the state courts, now that they're elected judges who are less likely to thwart their plans. So it's just, kind of strategic, what they're doing, tactical when it's Democrats, and it's just ambitious, just plowing ahead from the Republicans. Oh, they don't care. They don't care. They're lawless. Just doing their thing. And they got Eric Holder talking about all this stuff, Mr. Wingman for Obama, which, by the way, Eric Holder is not just like a random sort of innocent actor and all this stuff. He has worked with different ballot initiatives and organizations to restructure how gerrymandering is done. And his organization is the reason why Michigan was changed, our law. So it was taken out of the hands of, you cannot like what the legislature might put together, but at the end of the day, those are your representatives. So they are supposed to reflect what you want. You can vote them out or whatever. And if they do wrong and try to push stuff, you still have the courts who can try to do checks and balances there. His organization, they took it out of the voters' hands and are putting it in the hands of this committee. And it was the ballot. Granted, the voters did vote for it. They had a pretty simple and convincing ballot initiative measure, and the Republicans frankly didn't fight well enough. Like, I was around during that time. I wasn't at State Party during that time. I think maybe I was, but like they should have been calling people to try, like, on our side, to convince them not to do it, because it got over 50%. So I'm like, okay, obviously Republicans voted for it, but they thought, since it was anti-gerrymandering, they thought it was going to get rid of like huge Democrat districts, like the 14th district, which no longer exists, but that was an 80-20 district. So Republicans were voting for it to get rid of something like that. They didn't understand what it did. So and I don't think a lot of people did, but they took it out of the hands of our elected officials, and they have like a committee of a certain amount of Republicans and Democrats and independents, and they get to draw out the maps, and it's basically what their say. And you can't be on the commission or consider in the commission if you've even done something like been a precinct delegate, and precinct delegate is like the bottom sort of most kind of low level political thing that you can do and run for. And then your spouse couldn't run for it. I don't even think like a sibling or something. Like they really wanted like no political background to be able to make a map, which I don't understand what would be the reasoning for that, why you wouldn't want some people with some background to draw the maps, but it was a very kind of long process. But anyway, he's been on this for a minute, Eric Holder, and he's part of this drama too.
Let me ask you, how can gerrymandering both be a threat to democracy and also the way to save it?
Well, there's no question that gerrymandering is a threat to our democracy. It allows politicians to pick their voters as opposed to citizens choosing their representatives. But we are now in a situation where we find ourselves where authoritarian moves are being made by the White House through various states, Texas most prominent among them. And there has to be a response to that. What I've said is that we have to protect our democracy now if we ultimately want to be able to save it. And so taking the reasonable steps that have been proposed in California, I think it makes a great deal of sense in this moment. A temporary way in which to respond to that which is happening in Texas, with the thought that after this crisis has passed, we get back to the fight against gerrymandering by anybody.
Yeah, so they're justifying Democrats going and gerrymandering to try to get more seats. Even though like Republicans bad for democracy, how dare you? Even though of course they've done that before. Go look at Illinois maps and things like that. So it's okay if California just tries to cut out more Republican seats, or maybe New York tries to cut out more Republican seats in retaliation, and they're going to be the good guys, once they can defeat all the Republicans, and then everything is saved, right? When Democrats talk about threat to democracy, which you guys are probably in the comments like, we're not a democracy, which we're not, But they're the ones who are usually afraid of democracy. They're the ones who are usually afraid. That's why Kamala Harris couldn't run on what Trump actually wanted to do versus what she claimed that he wanted to do. And, they wouldn't talk about, his platform. They kept talking about Project 2025 and things that weren't even in Project 2025. They would just kind of make up, and they would splice, crap that he said. Donald Trump could literally just post like a whole interview with Kamala Harris talking and be like, here's our new ad. Wouldn't, no edits or anything, like just here she is. If you want her, you can have her. Like no more comment needed. And they would splice stuff and pretend like Donald Trump said stuff that he didn't actually say. Like the craziest one, and we talked about it at the time, but I'm gonna do it whether the women like it or not. And so Trump was talking about protecting women and their safety. And the reason why he's like, well, I'm going to do it whether the women like it or not, is because sometimes people advise him not to say like, hey, you can't say you're going to protect women. I don't know, because people view it as maybe sexist or something like that. And he's just like, well, I want to protect women. Like, why is it a bad thing? I'm just going to say, I'm going to protect women whether they like it or not, and he was just kind of going on one of his Trump rants, but he meant from like illegal immigration and like any sort of crime that might result, criminals might be coming across the border and other things like that, other sort of threats. So Kamala Harris and her team, they spliced that up. And then they just kept having like abortion headlines, like different stories. And they're like, I'm going to do it whether the women like it or not. I'm going to talking about banning abortion. I'm going to do it whether the women like it or not. So that's the kind of stuff that they would have to push, versus Trump could just be legitimately honest about where she stood on the issues. They could make an ad with her claiming that she wanted to, give transgender care to illegal detainees, because that's a true thing. So that was what was really wild about that campaign. But if you really cared about democracy and the voice of the people, then you would be honest to the people about where you stand and where your opponent stands, and let them make an informed decision. So that's not the only way in which Democrats don't actually care about democracy. I've different articles about it and stuff you guys can go check out at blackteens.com. But We'll keep watching that story. It's just really wild. Almost as wild. I don't know what's more wild, this gerrymander story or this DC story. So Donald Trump has had enough of the crime in DC and he wants something done about it. So they want to take over. They want like Pam Bondi on point, you know, and they want the streets to be safer. And Democrats are having an issue with that. And there's journalists saying, "What are you talking about? I'm not afraid in DC." And some of them don't live in DC or they don't live in the areas with like super high crime, you know. Other people who are going to be honest talked about the sorts of things that they have seen in their time of living there. One of the instances that I can think of that was so egregious and just really hard to think about. If you've seen the video, I'm not going to play the video, but it was very viral at the time. But there was a man, he was like an immigrant, who's an Uber driver. And this was like in the Navy Yard. There were some teenage girls who tried to tase him and steal his car. And so he like wouldn't kind of let go, and they start like driving off, and he's like kind of hanging like in the door, and then the car crashed and like flipped over. And they were getting out of the car and people were like livid because the girls were like, I gotta get my phone. And they're just like, there's like a dead man in the street. And they're not like, oh my gosh, we just killed somebody. They're like, where's my phone? And I'm like, he had a family. And it's just some teenagers. You're tasing people and stealing their cars? Like, that's his livelihood. He doesn't just need that to get around. That's his livelihood. And it's bad enough when people steal stuff anyway. Like I was so heartbroken when somebody stole my laptop a couple years ago. I guess it was more than a couple years ago now, but I was so mad. I mean, I don't like thieves. I was watching videos today of like police officers getting called on shoplifters. They're always like, I don't have any ID. I didn't do nothing. And of course, there's video footage of them taking stuff or pictures of them taking stuff, and they find the merchandise. I'm like, why throw your life away for a couple of like makeup products? Like, go to the dollar store, not the dollar store. You go to Dollar General or Five Below or something. You know, you don't got to go risk it all for Kohl's. And people were, in the comments were like, you could have got so much Kohl's cash if you just bought stuff. Joking, like they would have just gave you the stuff by the time you spent all your Kohl's cash. My mom loves Kohl's and using that Kohl cash, man. But it's bad enough when people steal, period. But stealing a car, and that man was just trying to provide for his family, and you leave, you come to America, the land of hopes and dreams and opportunity and all that stuff, and you get carjacked by some teenagers in the nation's capital. That should not be happening. Now the police are quick to come and write you a ticket if you've been parked too long in the wrong spot. They'll come out of nowhere like ninjas and write you a ticket. They'll gladly do that. It's a little harder for them to catch these teenagers though. I just think there's a little misplaced priorities. I think it's I mean, I don't live there, but I think they should get the city together, and he shouldn't have to do it. He shouldn't have to do it. That's the issue. You can say, well, crime has gone down. Crime has gone down since like the pandemic and BLM and all that stuff. Sure. But people might be underreporting and fudging the numbers as well. So there's a little some of that. Colin said, because they get money for the tickets. I know why they do it. I know why they do it. There's just no grace for the ticket stuff, man. You know, it's like immediately. Immediately. I don't like going to DC. But that Navy Yard carjacking was just wild. We had like I don't know how bad it is right now, but during the midterms I was like, there are all these different stories about kids, you know, stealing cars in Michigan. Like they think it's fun. I'm like, where are these parents? Like you have to kind of know what's going on, right? Like somebody in the family has to know that your 15, 14-year-old or whatever is out here stealing cars. Like, why are there no eyes on these kids? It's just bizarre. It's just bizarre. But I want to show you guys this video of Simone Sanders was asked on Morning Joe, is it safer to have more police around? And she doesn't apparently think so.
You don't think more police make streets safer?
No, Joe, I'm a Black woman in America. I do not always think that more police make streets safer. When you walk down the streets of Georgetown, you don't see a police officer on every corner, but you don't feel unsafe. So what is it about talking about places like Southeast DC, right? Ward 8, if you will, that people say, well, we need more officers to make us safe. I think we have to rethink what safety means in America.
Safety means, for me, okay, that you're not concerned that crime is going to happen to you. And if something happens, that you can call the police and they will be there in less than 5 minutes. This idea, when she's like, no, police don't make me feel safer because I'm a Black woman in America. Immediately my thought was, shut up. But I wanted you guys to watch the rest of the clip. I wanted you to watch the rest of the clip, but my immediate thought was, shut up. I will call the police in a hot second. Oh my gosh, a hot second. Hot second. I heard my neighbors, not some time ago, there were other neighbors, but they had some domestic issues, I guess. Like, well, they were arguing a lot and stuff, and I was just, sometimes it would get so heated, I get concerned. And then there was like this big like thud that, to me, it kind of sounded like, I guess my mind immediately went to, he's hit her and she's like knocked over on the kitchen floor. That's what it sounded like in my head. And I think I might still have like arguments like on my phone of them arguing, like, because you could hear through the walls. I immediately called the police. I wasn't a second thought. I was like, can you come my neighbors? I'm concerned. You know, I'll call them in a hot second if I think something's going on. And you better be here in less than 5 minutes. Better be here in less than 5 minutes. If it's 10 minutes, that's you got to get together. Y'all better figure something out. And sometimes 5 minutes might not be enough for people. And that's why you have to consider your own safety. You have to have, you know, buy baseball bats, buy firearms, you know, you got to be able to protect yourself. Okay. But yeah, I will call the police in a hot second. I will. There's been other instances where I've had to call the police. But yeah, I want to know. I don't want something. I don't want to have to be fearful that my car is going to be stolen. It's crazy that in areas like DC or out in California, other places, you are advised to just keep your doors unlocked, so people don't just break in. Like, oh, if it's unlocked, they could just open the doors and search for stuff. Now, I've always been taught, like, if we went to Detroit or something for to go preach at a church or something, in like bad areas of town or whatever. It didn't even necessarily be that bad, but it was like in Detroit or kind of surrounding-ish kind of areas, that you don't leave anything in plain sight where people would look in and then steal something. But it's like worse than that today. Like people will maybe just assume something's in there anyway and would just open the window, like bust open the windows and search for stuff. I've seen videos of people in California who leave their trunks like wide open, windows down, so people can see there's nothing to take. But that doesn't mean they won't take the car. We shouldn't have to live like that. We shouldn't have to live like that. Now, there's definitely been places that I've traveled to, neighborhoods and stuff, that I haven't felt safe, that have looked really rough, and been like hotels I stayed at, looked out the windows to keep checking to make sure the car is still there. Well, one time I went to Atlanta for like it was a Vampire Diaries convention. And it was pretty early when they started putting them on, I think, and I was selling some of my books there. It's not like a Comic-Con where you can, like, anything kind of goes with some, like, selling stuff. They're like, you couldn't even sell like fan art if it was like prints or whatever. It has to be like unique, one-to-one sort of thing. You can't make like trinkets and other things like that. You'd have to be like licensed, like WB dealers and stuff like that. So but I had some books. I'm like, well, this audience might like some of my books. And at the time, I think they didn't have the print clause, so we were selling some prints. And Joseph Morgan, who played Klaus, was there. If any TVD fans are there, there were other people there, but Klaus actually signed my sister's portfolio. But anyway, we passed by some building, like, oh, that building looks really nice, and there was like State Penitentiary. I'm like, oh, where are we? And like the hotel, we didn't stay it was at a hotel, the convention, but we were like tight on money, so we didn't stay at the hotel, that hotel, but we stayed in another hotel. And yeah, on the way down, I think, and it just was rough. And then, like, at one point I walked out to go get lunch, and some guys came up on me and were catcalling. Now, I'm not that girl to complain about catcalling. And if you're like, Christina, you're quite big, are you sure people were catcalling you? Big ladies get catcalled too. There's some dudes out there who like big ladies. And they were, and I wasn't quite as big as I am right now, but they were really aggressive. And I didn't feel safe. I didn't feel safe. I don't try to lead guys on, and I don't buzz them off rude. I try to, like, be like, oh, just thank you, and but I'm like, that's nice, but let me get to my destination or whatever. But I didn't feel safe. There's another time in Lansing something like that happened, and I was walking. I worked at the Michigan Republican Party, and they have an office down in Lansing. And I think I walked to go get food or something. I think it was more likely I was playing Pokemon Go. I could have been doing both, though. Could have been playing Pokemon Go while I was walking to go get food. And there were some guys who came up on me, and I did not feel safe. I was immediately like gonna hit like the police button or my dad or something. Like, I was immediately about to call, and I was just trying to get further on to my destination. So yeah, there's all kinds of instances where you can feel unsafe, but unfortunately, like Simone saying I'm a black woman, like, police don't make me feel safe. we know that areas in where you live, you're usually victimized by the people around you. And there is a disproportionate amount of like violent crime that'll go on in some of these, areas where there's a lot of Black people, unfortunately. And it's not because Black people are inherently evil or something like that, but there are some socioeconomic issues that do kind of run rampant in some Black communities. And you can look at different issues that stem from that. And like, we can look at fatherless homes or children out of wedlock and single moms and throw out other kind of variables or whatever. But Black people are the ones who are victimized. So you can, I don't know, stand up for the criminal and be like, oh, they don't feel safe. Okay, but what about the person who needs them to show up to stop the crime from happening? And BLM had this narrative like, oh, the police are just hunting down people. They're just hunting down people. And they would, there were instances that would occur where the police acted in the wrong, sure. But a lot of times they would cry wolf with some of these stories or exaggerate stuff, and it would just cause a bunch of hate and misinformation. And with the narrative that they're hunting people down, that just was never the case. And unfortunately, people did get it that in their minds. And there are people who thought that police were killing like 1,000 people a year, 1,000 unarmed Black people a year, which is insane. And the number is like 20 or less. So if your mind is skewed like that, maybe you'll be like, yeah, I'm terrified when the police show up. But me, I want the police to show up when I have a problem. And when they show up, you want to not try escalate a situation. You want to, be calm, because they have to go home to their family too, or at least try to. And they're the one who's armed. So you got to try not to escalate a situation. But yeah, she's crazy. Simone Sanders, if you're like, man, that lady was crazy. She worked on the Biden campaign. And before she worked on the Biden campaign, she was a Bernie gal. So that's the kind of people they hire. Anyway, let's move on. Let's talk about this Tucker Carlson situation before I leave you all good night. But or bid you all good night, rather. So Tucker Carlson had on George Stephanopoulos' sister. And she is a nun in the Russian Orthodox Church. She lives out of Bethlehem, which is controlled by the Palestinian Authority. They're talking about like Christians can't even do this stuff in Bethlehem. And Tucker's like, not even in Bethlehem? And it's like, okay, but who controls that area? Christians did more activity and lived in that there more when they had control of it. But he will interview people, he'll talk to them, and he won't push back on what they say. He just lets them talk. Sometimes he like goes into them, but he inserts his opinion. He has no sort of journalistic integrity or curiosity. Tucker seemed like a very curious person before, and he was very aggressive when it came to like Ted Cruz and so on. But it asks like the dumbest, most disingenuous questions to try to make Ted Cruz look foolish. But Tucker, he's not really honest nowadays, but he is talented in the things that he does. But people have talked about this interview. Like, let me read a comment that someone had reposted about it. I think it's someone who normally likes him. He said, I have finished this interview, but it was by far the worst interview I have ever seen Tucker Carlson conduct. Not because it was critical of Israel, because it lacked any form of journalistic curiosity, wild statements made and unchallenged, or even prodded for more details. At times, Tucker was outright feeding the interviewee talking points with total loaded questions / his own opinions. This section in particular, and I'll go ahead and play that section, but before I do, I want to note that Tucker's been like this for a while. Like when he first started doing his like interviews, releasing them on X, one of the first ones he did was with the guy who claimed to have slept with Obama. And at that time, actually, there was an event where he came to Michigan and I got to see him again. And I can't remember if I watched the interview before that or after that, but I talked about it at the time. I'm like, I'm not saying this is a totally implausible story or whatever, but I acknowledge that Tucker had no like really pushback on the guy. And at one point, when he was trying to like say that his story was credible, he mentioned that he took a lie detector test. But then he didn't tell his audience that he failed the lie detector test. Now, I'm not saying that lie detector tests are like a perfect science or anything like that, or 100% reliable all the time, but you brought it up to, prop up his credibility, but didn't do your audience justice and tell him that he failed it. You could have added the caveat that like, he didn't pass it, but they're not totally 100% conclusive, and let the audience decide. But you're picking and choosing and manipulating us in a way. And he didn't push back on the story. He just kind of sat there and listened to it to be scandalous and to get the views and the clicks and so on and the eyeballs. And I watched it. Other people watched it. People were talking about it then, and people are still talking about Tucker now. But I think there is something going on with Tucker that's a bit more devious, and people have been pointing it out, especially particularly with this interview, that they think that Tucker has a mission to drive Christians away, well, to make them oppose Jews, and a lot of Israel critics are trying to be like, oh, why aren't the Muslims more of your friends than these Jews over here? And sometimes they'll say stuff like, well, they actually respect Jesus and the Jews don't. I'm like, I don't really think that Muslims have a very respectful opinion about Jesus when you try to demote him and say that he's not God, and you lie about different things that happened and undermine my entire faith. But whatever. Whatever. But that appears to be his sort of goal. I don't know if this is a particular clip, but I can, where he says something that I think is outright crazy, but I'm gonna play this clip that this guy decided to share.
It gets back to the thing though, is that people don't always see the whole story, and we're just flooded with this message that those terrorists are coming to get us next, which is absurd. Has any member of Hamas or anybody of Palestinian come and threatened America as an American? No, that's not what they're about. The thing is but that's the tactic that's used, is that we have to plaster them as being these jihadists when they're nothing like that.
Are they?
Okay, just FYI, and you guys know if you watch, but I think last week I played you guys a video of a Hamas leader talking about how they were going to gun from America next. When George W. Bush was like, they hate our freedoms after like 9/11 and stuff, that was a PC thing, way to put it. And the reality is they don't like infidels. You are not a Muslim, you're a Christian, you're a Jew, you're whatever, but you're not a Muslim. We got beef. That's their thing. They don't want to just stop at Israel and the Jews. They're gunning for the Christians next. And we are the great Satan and stuff. Like, what she's saying just isn't true. And there's videos to prove it. She's out here really trying to cover for Hamas and just say that they're about rebellion and protecting their land and so on. And they have it in their charter that they want to kill Jews. Like, it's such a dumb lie. And Tucker must obviously know that what she's saying isn't true.
I mean, I'm sure you've dealt with Hamas or know people who have, right? Are they religious fanatics? Are they jihadis?
not the people that I know. Like I said, when I was again in at the school, we had a couple teachers, Muslim men, and there were some elections going on. And it wasn't Hamas then. It was the Social Party or something. It was definitely a Muslim religious party. I would have voted for those guys because they weren't corrupt. They wanted to serve their people, and that's what it was about. So I'm not saying it doesn't happen anywhere. I'm not totally ingrained in the community, but the vibe there isn't one of wanting everybody to convert to Islam and forcing it upon them at all. And the purpose of Hamas is primarily to resist and to protect their people and their land.
It's not just Palestine and Israel where the Christian population has shrunk. It seems like throughout the Levant.
Yes. And I think that's part of the whole greater Israel project. Isn't it so ironic that they've made such a big
targeting Christians?
Targeting Christians, yeah. Well, targeting to make control for Israel, for example, in Syria. I went to Syria in 2004, and I went to the convent of St. Thecla, where outside of Damascus, in Malula, where the nuns were kidnapped by ISIS, right? And the population is over 10% Christian, and you have ancient Christian sites as well as vibrant monastic communities there and vibrant churches and hospitals that were run by the church in Syria and Lebanon, right? And now, what have we done? And so Assad wasn't perfect. Saddam Hussein wasn't perfect. But the Middle East is not the United States. And we tried to impose ourselves there and get rid of these governments who, for all the repression, also kept the people allowed minorities to survive there.
Including Christians.
Yeah. And Christians, yeah.
So,
it gets back to the...
Sorry, I didn't mean to play that again. Hamas, they do want to kill Christians. I know. I also played a video clip for you guys last week. It was of Christopher Hitchens. He was on Bill Maher's show. I think it was last week. Might have been the week before. And he was talking about Pirates of Tripoli and how the Muslims were attacking the U.S. ships, and the U.S. is like, "What? Why are you guys coming after us? We didn't do anything to you. Like, like we didn't have anything to do with the Crusades. Like, we're like a newish nation. Like, what is this?" And like, oh, this is what Islam tells us that we can do. So this is what we are doing. People who just think that everything that's bad that happens in the world is some kind of result of the West, and that basically we're getting what's coming to us because we're involved in all this stuff, or in the Middle East or whatever, poking our nose. I'm not saying we don't poke in our nose sometimes, but guys, sometimes there are evil people out there who are being driven by evil ideology, and they want to do bad things because they not only believe that they can, but they should. And sometimes it's that simple. I know people don't want to think of life in terms of good and evil and right and wrong, but sometimes it really is that simple. And I think I gotta play this clip, part of this clip. I think it's, are Christians treated better in other Arab countries? That's at 118.
So it's not everything is perfect. You can't have division.
Sorry.
Because that is going to be Israel. Bullet point, an AIPAC bullet point, time period when there were churches and they were part of the society. So there was nothing wrong with being a Christian. And in Syria, when I would now who knows what's going to happen? But certainly the time when I was there.
Well, Israel controls those countries now. So.
Well, they're trying to make inroads. Yeah. Well,
it seems like Tucker is even more kind of radical than she is. Well, no, it's Israel who controls those countries now. Okay. What about before, bro?
What did they do first? They bombed after Assad went down. They get rid of all the military. So what is the point of Abu Jalani being there now, the ISIS head? Without who is he serving? Is he serving the Syrian people or the Israeli people?
What's
Country.
the answer?
Right now, it looks like he's serving Israel.
What's so surprising is that you think of, or in the United States, people think of Israel as like this foothold of Western civilization in the Middle East. And so you would imagine the Christians would do a lot better under Israeli control than they would under Assad's control. But
no, that's not the case at all. That's it. Definitely not the case at all. It's
How is that not the case?
I'd like to talk a little bit more about the Palestinians themselves.
I would
and
love
their form
to
of
hear.
resistance, because I think
my dad went to Pakistan years ago. I think it was like 2006, but he's kept relationships with the people that he went and ministered with and to. But when he did go, there are people who he stayed with, and he had never been around so many guns because he had to be protected from terrorists, so there's that. There are rules about, he did preach to like a big multitude of people, but there are rules about giving like open altar calls, like as far as like asking people to convert. It's very dangerous to do that. When he started doing Skype missionary work with them, like they would go to like unchurched villages and they would set up and their cameras or whatever, and he would call in and he would preach to them from the living room, and they'd be in Pakistan, and he'd tell the difference between like Jesus and Allah and what you can have in Christ versus what they have. And people would make a decision, and hundreds, thousands of people would convert just through those different interactions and stuff. One time he was having trouble getting a hold of the people that he worked with because a terrorist had come in and they threatened the folks that he worked with, and they said, if you guys don't stop this, we're going to kill you and kill your whole family. And they like tried to steal their equipment, still did steal some stuff, like. And so my dad asked him, like, what are you guys going to do? And so they decided that they were still going to go ahead and preach the gospel. And so they continued, and they're still going strong. But there'd be times when people would convert and they were treated so poorly that they would just ask for a little bit of help, or they would work to do like the mission Skype stuff, because otherwise Christians just wouldn't have any money to feed their families and stuff. They're very much persecuted around the world. I haven't heard Tucker Carlson, if he's so concerned about Christian persecution and whether it's better to live as a Christian in Israel or in other places with Muslims, why isn't he talking about what's going on in Nigeria and Christians who are being killed there? That's another place my dad went. He went there in 2000, hasn't gone back since. He did go twice though. He went by himself, I think, first, and then he went later with my oldest sister Gina, and after she graduated high school. And it was a trip that really changed the trajectory of her life. But rough place to go. Just a lot of places aren't like the US, obviously. But my heart breaks for what's going on over there right now. And there's Christians persecuted all over the place. And much of that persecution is coming from Muslim nations. I know in Israel, they don't, well, I guess Jewish people in general don't like to try to be converted. And they themselves don't actively convert people either. They, I guess, discourage it, which I don't understand, because if you have the truth, I guess, why would you not want to share it, I guess. But I just don't understand the mindset, I guess. But I've seen a viral video of some, people treating some Christians, poorly, like some Jewish kids or whatever, like trying to kick some Christians and stuff, that went viral on TikTok some years ago. But the sort of things that Tucker's trying to insinuate and push compared to other people who've lost their lives, Christians who have been burned alive. It's insane. It's insane. Someone said my daddy was amazing. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. He's a heart for the people. He's ministered all over the place. It was dangerous when I went to the Philippines when I was 14. In the 10th grade, we went to the Philippines, and there were like a couple terrorist attacks that had happened, including like a ferry bombing and some other stuff during the time that we went. And there were the State Department was like, don't go here. They issued a warning, like, don't go. And so we all prayed about it, and we felt like, one, we felt good in our spirits about it, that we would be fine. Two, this was when George W. Bush was still the president. No, wait, it couldn't have been then. It couldn't have been. Did we still? Maybe we just kind of still had that attitude. Did I say 24? I was 14. I said I was in 10th grade. Okay. It wasn't 2014. I was 14. I was in the 10th grade. That year had to have been 2005, maybe. Okay, so President Bush was still the president, and we all felt like if something happened, the cowboy would get us home. So people could not like Bush, but people still felt like, he had some kahunas, okay? So we felt like the American government would do right by us. And the third thing, was like, okay, and I also feel like my dad, my brother, like they'll fight, spirit of Rambo or spirit of Samson or something will come up, and we'll be okay. But really, 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 I wanted to go because we were having a layover in Japan, and I was such an anime head at the time, and I wanted to say that I went to Japan. So that was like the cherry on top of I've got to go. You cannot stop me. So we went to the Philippines. But it was dangerous at the time. And we actually had a civilian who was volunteered with the U.S. State Department. And sometimes people do stuff like that because they're, they want to do some good favors, and maybe they'll be on the fast track of when they'll, coming over here and becoming a citizen or whatever. But he would like follow us with a satellite phone just to make sure that we weren't kidnapped. So he would pop by, was friendly. He would ask questions, we'd make small conversation. He knew a little too much about American culture and stuff. And so he would just kind of know when we were supposed to be back or whatever. And, so he had that satellite phone just to tip off anybody if something that happened to us. So I was glad that the U.S. government was looking out for us in that kind of way. But it was dangerous to go over there. I mean, there's other dangerous places for Christians, different communist countries. You can't just be a Christian proclaiming the full gospel in China. There's an underground church. There are churches, but they have very structured things that they can say and can teach or whatever. So it's dangerous there and other, communist sort of focused places, but the Muslim world is very dangerous for Christians, and for Tucker to even like entertain that Israel could be worse than like Muslim nations is just bizarre. By the way, Candace Owens went on a rant about that. Not that specifically that, but she said something like Jews have killed Christians and blamed the Muslims. So I'll have to write some stuff down, I guess, through what they've said or what Tucker's been doing lately, because I do think there is a concerted effort to try to drive a wedge between the Christians and Jews, and there's so many evangelicals in the right-wing community that are so Israel first or whatever, and it is a lot. It is a bit much. Like, I was complaining to somebody about some of the stuff that Trump was doing, and they're like, but he supports Israel. I'm like, okay, but he's kind of sloppy on abortion right now. Like, it can't be the thing. So there's I'm not gonna pretend like there aren't some people who are like overly focused on that, but still they are our partner in the Middle East, and the way that people are trying to drive a wedge and tear us apart, I think it's transparent. But I think it's sad what's going on with Tucker Carlson, but his lack of journalistic curiosity and integrity, it's not new. And maybe this is kind of how he always sort of was, but he's just really, really making it apparent. I did used to love Tucker Carlson. I would DVR his show, but I eventually, and I loved him like bringing on like these really, really crazy liberals, basically people you'd find on TikTok. He'd bring them on his show, ask them questions, and stuff that they obviously couldn't answer, didn't have a good answer to. He'd make the dumb Tucker face, like he's amazed, like, and stare. And it was just great TV, but eventually it did get old for me. So I stopped DVRing stuff. But at the time when I saw him at the inauguration in 2017, I was like, oh my gosh, it's Tucker Carlson. And now he's interviewing George Stephanopoulos' sister as she tries to convince us that Hamas are just, looking out for the people. So what a world, guys. What a world. Anyway, thank you guys for joining me today. Please go to blacktonews.com, check out different content, the website, articles, videos, etc. If you like what I do here, please consider leaving a donation on the website, because it does cost a stream room, my site, all that stuff, so you guys can support. I very much appreciate you guys. You guys can also check out different merch that's available on the website. And you guys can also check out my different books that are available, like my children's chapter books, and I got some young adult stuff. I have my nonfiction books, like, of course, God is Blatantly Against Abortion. I did a post about, I'm not going to go into this story to prolong the ending, but I wrote a post about it on YouTube and Facebook. If you haven't seen about the TikTok where there was a pro-choice Catholic, and they're like, I read the Bible, and they're like, the Book of Palms. And I'm like, oh my gosh, no, you did not just say you read through the whole Bible and then just like confidently said the Book of Palms. She also mentioned like the Book of Isaac too, which is not a thing. So I could go more deep. I did a TikTok about that too, so maybe I'll post it online or whatever, so you guys can see more of the interaction. But I basically wrote it down. But it was just wild. Anyway, the Catholic Church does not teach that. I'm not Catholic, but I know that. But you can get a book like, of course, Guys Blake Gets Abortion, because he totally is. You should. It's not just that abortion itself is sinful. It's that to get to that point, to be like, okay, this is the thing I'm going to do. You've already made some turns and you're spiraling. Like David getting to the point where like he impregnated a woman in committed adultery, and then somehow that led to murder. Like he did a bad thing, and instead of like coming back to God and being like repenting on his face, it was just like, let me just keep spiraling and eventually you get to murder. No. So anyway, pick up the book, because it does talk about all the ways that it is bad, and also goes through some objections that I hear all the time, like Exodus 21, Numbers 5, etc., etc. Anyway, God bless you guys, and I will see you tomorrow.